Hey, what's going on? You know who it is. It is Bruce Jordan, the Michael Jordan of hotels. We have Jason in the building again. Man, I think he's probably been the person that's been on this podcast the most right about now. This will be his fourth episode. So, how's everything going, Jason?
Great to be here, Bruce. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Glad to hear that. Today we're going to be talking about franchise revenue management versus real managed revenue management. What's the difference and what you can expect, and some of the issues that we're having with franchise revenue management versus real revenue management. Jason, let everybody know a little bit something about yourself and how you got in this business.
Absolutely. I started in food and beverage in my younger days, full service hotels, and again, had the great opportunity to work alongside of many great leaders who gave me different opportunities. And really in 2014, I found my career had really started to plateau and doing great things working for a company called Visions Hotels in upstate New York. Gave me an incredible opportunity to start as a regional operations manager. And then in 2015, mid 2015, they said, Jason, what about starting our own revenue management department? Is that something that you're interested in? And I said, absolutely. Me being an ops person, having been in many revenue management calls, I said, thinking to myself, sure, I could do this. I got this, right? I know revenue management. Well, sitting on the calls and asking questions is a lot different than being the person trying to explain or trying to convince others of what the strategy should be or how to pivot and how to understand what the brand is trying to do. So we went from brand revenue management to creating our own
Mm-hmm.
playbook, our own frequency of calls. And, you know, at what point do you scale up, right? So where we were was X amount of hotels, and we knew that the company was going to continue to grow. And how many hotels can one person actually manage and do so without diminishing returns? So that was all me year one, year two, trying to figure all that out and try to get ownership to go from branded support into our own. And in the end, we were very, very successful. I ended Visions Hotels with over 70 hotels
Mm-hmm.
and a great support team of, I think it was about four individuals and some analysts doing a great job and doing great things. And that company continues to grow.
Now, what was the biggest difference numbers wise? Like, did you see a 5% increase, 10% increase when you switch from branded revenue management versus keeping everything in house?
I think the first thing that owners are looking at when we make the switch isn't necessarily the top line dollar. Of course, they want to know the top line of each hotel, but they want to see that cost savings, right? What does that
Mm-hmm.
look like on our fee structure? And it only really where it makes sense is if you're outsourcing across many hotels and then you bring it in house, right? But it's hard to gauge because it's not just, the dollar amounts, whether it be the cost savings or the top line savings. It's also what other work is that revenue manager doing for the ownership group and the philosophy and how they're managing. Brand revenue management, look, I think they do a great job. I've got great relationships with brand revenue managers who I partnered with up until very recently as we were navigating FIFA at a lot of hotels in Miami and across that region. They do excellent. A lot of great reports, a lot of good things that the brand can help support with, especially if you're running in sync with brand field marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge asset where I think owners want to protect themselves and steer away from brand revenue management is to make sure that they're being protected in the sense that they're not just looking at the enterprise, but they're looking at that specific hotel.
Hmm.
Right. And I think that's the key differentiator and why we are very successful as working for revenue managers directly for the ownership and the hotel, as opposed to a brand revenue management. That's how I see it.
I think a lot of franchises, they're having issues with revenue growth, especially the ones that are public. So to create more revenue, um, since they can't get enough growth through development, now they're trying to get revenue from other income, like central reservations, and because they didn't used to do revenue management before. So they're like, hey, we can create money with revenue management. Back when I was at IHD, when they were six continents, they did property management, so they managed hotels as well. And they eventually got rid of that because they've realized that even though it was an additional 5% increase in revenue, it was costing them too much. It was too chaotic. It was a little bit overbearing when it comes to operations, and a lot of times they'll end up losing franchisees because they were the ones managing the hotel. So if they mess it up, it's their fault. So you're gonna lose the
100%.
franchise and everything else that goes with it. So it's a little bit different. So I kind of feel like this isn't a skill play. It's more like a growth play because when I've had properties that had branded revenue management, man, those guys be there one week and gone the next. And you know as well as I know, it takes about 3 to 6 months to really learn someone's market, which is why it's very dangerous to keep rotating revenue managers because now you're started from scratch again.
Absolutely. Look, I've so in the past 12 months, I've had some great opportunities where I've worked with different ownership groups independently, under my own organization, my own, time, and doing some contract work for people, for
Mm.
owners. And we've looked at how do we build a revenue management team, department? How do you scale it? And we've looked at what are the advantages or disadvantages to going in and having the brand do it. And I had one ownership group, to your point, adamant and said, Jason, we're not going to proceed with the brand because it was a constant rotation.
Mm-hmm.
They said, Jason, if we go with the brand, even though the brand was only charging them X dollars a month, and it really wasn't as a percentage of revenue that particular hotel was doing, it wasn't a lot of money, right? It made sense rather than bringing on one person who now they have to fully employ, who now they have to, there's the cost of benefits, payroll taxes, benefits, and all. And it said, Jason, we every time we do this, we lose that revenue manager. We get that person ramped up and then they leave. Now we have to reteach them the market. And we don't have enough time to do that. We're a select serve hotel. We can't keep rotating.
So they're,
So,
they're they're literally paying to retrain someone over and over again. So they're pretty much just doing it themselves and just paying for it.
right, right. So, and I tell you, we've seen some brands, I think, are better than others with respecting the fact that they cannot just rotate. And then I don't think it's just necessarily the brand. I think it's the specific hotel brand,
Mhm.
right? And because, you think about it, each brand has its own complexity, right? A full service property is going to be less complex than a select serve or perhaps an extended stay. So is that I'll call it a launching pad for that revenue manager to start to learn, okay, the systems and the back end of things, and then move into the next phase of their training, if you would. The owners, they see this, as you just said, and, well, why am I paying for their training? And
Mhm.
that is definitely a struggle that we've had. So enter revenue management for, let's do it ourselves? Absolutely, if you could get past the test. What do I
Now,
mean by that?
what do you mean
Sorry.
by that?
So every brand has its own revenue management system, has its own property management system, has its own systems that in order to navigate, you need to be fully certified. You need to have some experience in those systems also, right? Let's say, talk about FIFA for a minute. Okay, how do you yield out the business that maybe you don't want? Or how do you yield certain rate codes out?
Hmm.
You need to know how to set up those special events, those high demand dates. And given the complexity of these systems, it's not just drop into a single place and click a button. You need to do some heavy lifting in the system to make and then test it, right? And
Hmm.
make sure that that's selling the correct way. And I think that's the part where some people think that, oh, let me, revenue management is so easy. You just, you're talking, taking a couple calls, looking at some charts. There is a lot of tactical work that goes into it. So on the flip side, I had one ownership group say, look, you know what? Let the brand do the tactical stuff. We're just going to feed them what we want strategically and what our numbers need to be at. So how do you balance that out? Um, in that particular ownership group, I thought that was a very good approach to it, but not everyone's willing to pay to have a commercial strategist overseeing brand revenue management. They want it all done themselves because, again,
Hmm.
in the owner's mind, if how do I know that that revenue manager is really doing the best for just my hotel, especially when there's several Marriotts on the same block or in a small radius?
You know what? You're absolutely right. But you have to, if the brand is doing it, you have to think about it from a brand's point of view that makes money off of the amount of revenue it generates. Let's just say Marriott. Fairfield Inn may be 120, $130 a night. A JW Marriott may be, $400 or $500 a night. Who am I? I'm obligated to make the most money from my brand.
Right.
So is it my goal to make sure the Fairfield Inn is doing best, where I'm only going to get 5% off of $120, or is my goal to make sure that JW Marriott is doing the best, where I'm going to get 5% off of $400 a night? It's in my best interest to make sure that the JW Marriott is full first as a brand. That's just the way I see it. I could be wrong though. I could be
No,
wrong, and that's with any brand. Marriott is just an example. So.
I agree. And that's where you take the individual revenue manager working for the individual hotel company or management ownership, whether they've got 5 hotels or however many properties. That revenue manager in that scenario that you just said is going to
Mhm.
look at that pricing of that JW and should jump up their prices accordingly to whatever they could actually capture, right? And look at that and say, let's price this thing correctly so that I could do the best for my owner. And I think that's where ownership appreciates having their own revenue management team. Because again, it, the person who's signing the revenue manager's check is signing the general manager's check, is signing
Mhm.
everyone's check. And I think by nature that also it eliminates the feel of a split, of a silo, right? We're all together, we all work for the same person.
Mhm.
So there's definitely some benefit there. Is there benefit by having the brand? I will say in times where brands are changing, there is definitely some advantage to having the brand support you. I mentioned a previous ownership group that utilizes the brand revenue management, partners with them, but has a person overseeing it that works for that ownership group. So, power of M, everyone's talking about it. The ACRS conversion, what Marriott's doing to get rid of or eliminate, retire, sunset, Marsha, and the older legacy systems.
Mhm.
The brand is actually doing the heavy lifting for you in that scenario. Now, back to my work with Visions Hotels, we were actually doing that work ourselves. And I could tell you, it is a tremendous amount of work that our team was having to do in order to pave the way for the new reservation system, for the new property management systems. So, is it, again, that's a one time thing though, and that doesn't happen often.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are certain scenarios where I do believe that partnering with the brand is advantageous. But then there are other scenarios where if you know your company's going to scale, if you know you're going to be managing multiple hotels, and irrespective of their full service or select serve, there's where I truly believe there's definitely a value add by building out your own revenue management team and having that person be part of that sales, marketing, and revenue department, right? It goes back to commercial, as I've always spoken about. Aligning sales, marketing, and revenue management with operations together under one roof, definitely very powerful thing to have as a
Now, what
hotel owner.
about because I think a lot of the newer um, franchise agreements are adding the revenue management portion into the agreement where it's mandatory to take it, or you don't take the franchise. Like, how do you get away from like what are you talking about? Like I really don't get it. So that's a sign of desperation for me. But how do you get away from that? We get away from the branded revenue management if you're an owner and you don't want to put yourself in a situation where the brand is selling out your property first so that they'll have nothing left but this 5-star 4-star luxury $2,000 rates
So,
available in your market.
so what that owner needs to do is call me, Jason
Mhm.
DiAgostino, and I will walk you through what steps and how to make it make sense. Um, you're 100% correct. I have a dear friend of mine who owns another revenue management company, um, sells full service revenue management solutions to different owners. And just, over the last couple of months, this individual said, Jason, it's getting harder and harder. Brands are making it more and more difficult, whether it be training certifications that they need to do, or one of their newer hotels where they said the brand must revenue manage it for the first 2 years. There's always a compelling business case that can be written. There's always discussion that can be had, but you have to have a support team that knows how to navigate the systems, that is certified. And I think what the brands are doing, it's two things. Do I want to think it's all about money? Well, it's definitely a revenue generator for them, like you said in the opening. The other part of that is protecting the systems, protecting the brand, which goes back to, is it better for the brand, the enterprise, or the owner? I work for owners. So my first and foremost, my thing is to make profit for ownership.
Mhm.
Uh, at the same time, also explain that there are certain things that the brand is trying to get or is pushing for us to do.
That's the one thing that I don't understand because even with promotions, like like a majority of Marriott hotels is in Texas. Like they have a huge base in Texas. So or other brands. So these brands are usually run out these promotions that may be great for one area on the West Coast, but not so good for another area on the East Coast. It may be the slow season on the West Coast, but it's the busy season on the East Coast. And what sometimes tends to happen is these brands they just have to swallow it if they can't, if there's no way to opt out of that particular promotion, so they have to swallow the loss when they could get 3, 4, 5x on the rate if that promotion did not exist.
I've seen it. You're right. Um, it's a challenge. And then when you go to try to yield out some of those promotions, you get, you know, X, right? Or you get an email, or the system, as we're seeing this happen with some brands right now, two brands in particular, the system will override every 90 days any of the settings that you, the revenue manager, put in. You could opt out of that auto deletion, but you only have that opportunity to do that once a year
Hmm.
or once every 6 months. So imagine being the revenue manager and you developed a strategy, and now the brand that's not necessarily looking at your hotel in particular, but it's looking at demand for the enterprise,
Hmm.
is now making a decision based on what it thinks is best for your hotel. Try explaining that to the owner. It's
Yeah,
not a fun conversation.
it's a good conversation to bring up again during renewal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then what the other thing that's crazy is that extended stay is very different from luxury. So, and you don't know who's driving that. They will put anybody in that seat in your extended stay property. You know, this guy, the new guy doesn't specialize in extended stay. He may specialize in something else. So you have no idea what skill set you're really getting.
I'm smiling, Bruce, because these scenarios that you're saying are so true. They're happening right now as I'm speaking to a few other owners. And you're right. Extended stay is a specialty.
Hmm.
Luxury, it's a specialty. Some of these individuals coming in are right out of college, out of university, and joining the brands as revenue managers.
They're English majors.
No comment. No comment. Um, Look, I've met some really, really talented folks on those teams coming in. And I think one of the things that I have seen is I have seen some of them through their journey, where next, maybe 18 months later, they're supporting a full service hotel.
Wow.
Is 18 months enough time? I don't know. It took me a long time to get into revenue management, and it took the revenue managers that worked for me at one of my previous opportunities a long time to get into their seats. And these were former GMs. I myself, a former GM. So we came up in a different way and came into our positions through operations and through living through some of those, hard operation scenarios, which also include sales, marketing, and revenue meetings, and with real life experience as
Hmm.
opposed to as opposed to theory and AI, right? Because now it's very easy to go into the what if scenario, into whether it be ideas or even just a what if scenario that you're running in Copilot, right?
Hmm.
As you drop in a budget and you drop in different rate programs that you're maybe considering changing. We didn't have all of that in the past. We did a lot of those what if scenarios ourselves, and we could tell you what happens and how that works or doesn't work. So again, I think there's so much happening out there, and I think this is part of the preparation for the change that we will see in the future in revenue management, with AI really going more and more mainstream. What I mean by that is, you will always need somebody to in that seat, but it's probably more of somebody looking at the guardrails and setting things up to protect the hotels so that they don't go below a certain floor or above a certain
Hmm.
ceiling. So I think that's some of what's happening is with that talent pool changing, and I think that's all part of a cost reduction, okay, from hotels, and where hotel franchise companies are going to be able to put out there different mandates and say, look, we could deliver this for you for X price.
That makes sense. One of the things that I've really been seeing is that they they're learning systems. They're not learning strategy. And the difference is when you go inside of a store, the cashier knows how to use the register. But if you said, okay, I'm going to give you 5 cents so you can give me X amount of change, they could not calculate that in their head anymore. They're like, you know what? Just keep it. It's free. Get out of here. They cannot calculate that in their head anymore. Like, hey, I'm giving you a dime, so you give me exactly X amount back. They have no idea. No idea. And that's what I'm seeing right now when it comes to, these new revenue managers. They know systems. They don't know strategy.
I love that scenario you just mentioned. Quick story. I took my son, okay, to the store, and I forgot how much it was. It was a small dollar amount, $3.76, a real interesting dollar amount. And my father was with us. My father paid. He paid with 100. He says to my son, if you could figure out how much change it is, the money's yours. The change. Okay. Well, okay. When it became the opportunity for him to get it, okay, he figured it out. And my dad ended up giving him the change.
Mm-hmm.
When you put people in the situation where they are forced or incentivized, okay, to go the next step and to think a little further, I think it motivates people, right? So a funny story. I had to share that, but I've definitely seen it. You're right. Is it strategy that they're producing or not? We need to we need more strategy. We need
Mm-hmm.
more, and we need proactive strategy, right? A lot of times, what'll happen is we're talking about it, but it's too late, right? What could we have done ahead of time? So back to the brands.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the brands will not give you strategy. They're limited as to what they could actually tell you to do because of different laws, right? Antitrust laws, whatever they may be. And if I'm paying this amount of money for these calls as an owner, why do you need me to give you the strategy? Why
There
can't you
you
just
go.
figure
There
it
you
all
go.
out? Right. So we get back to what I said earlier. What's the added value? Or am I better off just having it where we're doing this all ourselves, where we are developing that strategy and executing it?
I think part of it is the owners that they don't understand the cost. Like if I go get an oil change and I use regular oil and I pay 70 dollars and that oil change lasts us 3,000 miles versus if I pay $80 and get a synthetic oil change, that oil change lasts 5,000 miles. They don't see the cost of what they're really getting. They only see, hey, I get to save $10.
Right.
That's what they see. And I remember I had a guy that wanted to hire me, and I was twice the price that he was paying for, the brand revenue management. I'm like, yeah, but they're not doing this. You're losing $200,000 a year trying to save a couple of grand. That doesn't make any sense because of what they're not doing.
I can't tell you how many times it's been, well, I want to save money.
Hmm.
And sometimes even just getting the phone call or having the meeting and saying, could you quantify this? Why do you really need another revenue manager? Do it yourself, figure it out.
Hmm.
And the response is, it's insurance. It is insurance because all it takes is two special events to be announced, a shifting of a date to happen. And this is something that AI or machine learning is not catching. All right. This is something that person, that revenue manager is doing for you on behalf of your hotel. And if you miss one or two or three of those dates, forget it. You could have paid for three revenue managers, but
That's right.
because you wanted to save a few dollars by going, you know, regular oil,
Hmm.
we lost it. And guess what? We cannot get it back because there's only five special events and we missed three of them.
There you go. There you go, man. Listen, Jason, thank you so much. I didn't even realize it was a half an hour already.
You know, we love
Conversation's
talking
so
about
good.
this. Great conversation. We could probably keep on going about this one, but excellent talk with you, Bruce. Thank you.
You're welcome. How can everybody get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Jason D'Agostino, or feel free to give me a call, Jason D'Agostino, 718-640-3820. That's my cell phone number. Call anytime.
All right. And this is Bruce Short and the Michael Jordan Hotels signing out. Hey, what's going on? It's Bruce Short, the hotel revenue expert. I just want to take a quick second to thank you for watching this video. If you could just do us a big favor and just subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more videos like this, more information, great information about hotels. I'm also the author of the Hotel Revenue Bible. You can get that book on hotelrevenuebible.com. And we are here to answer all your questions. So if you have any questions, just shoot us a quick text at 321-321-2002. That's 321-321-2002. And you can book a revenue call. Go to hotelrevenuecall.com and we can answer any and all your questions. Just make an appointment with me. You'll do one-on-one with me. You'll be able to do one-on-one with me, and we could go ahead and get all your questions answered and see if you have any revenue issues that needs to be resolved. Talk to you soon. Thank you again. Hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate you.